Hi, everyone. Welcome back to What Happens in Vegas. Today, we have a very special guest, Leigh Ann Lindsey. You have a very powerful story that got you into being a very specific practitioner and creating your own type of therapy for patients called EVOX, right? Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so fun because you came on my show, and I think we had such a great conversation. What you're doing is so relevant to the patients I'm seeing, so it was really fun to get to have you on, and now it's fun to get to reverse the roles a little bit.
I know. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your story, like how you got into seeing patients? Because I saw a little bit about what you're doing, and I know that it was your own story that brought you into what you're doing now, just like for myself.
Yeah, completely. I've always been in the health and wellness world. My bachelor's was in public health and epidemiology, and I worked as a research assistant. So I always knew I wanted to be in the health world, but I started moving so much more into the holistic health world as I got more into my 20s. But really, the catalyst of change that put me on this trajectory is in 2020, I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer at 25. And I was lucky enough, to make a very long story short, I was lucky enough to be connected with an integrative cancer center here in Southern California. And there were many, many things I was doing there to address deeper contributors to cancer.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I was introduced to is a technology called EVOX therapy, which we'll get
Yeah.
into much more as we go.
Mhm.
And it was just absolutely life changing for me. It really, really changed my life. And EVOX is really working on the emotional, energetic components of illness,
Mhm.
emotional, energetic imbalances. And I really felt that my breast cancer, the emotional component was the biggest factor. It wasn't the only factor, and it never is the only factor, but I really do feel that for me, it was the biggest factor. And so the amount of not just emotional, but physical healing that came from doing that work in conjunction with other work was immense. And so about a year later, I got trained, I got certified, and I just really felt like this was the tool I'm meant to use in the world. And
Mhm.
so I launched my own practice. I've since started my PhD in depth psychology, which is all about the unconscious mind. And so my practice is really about blending this technology of EVOX with depth psychology and this unconscious tending to
Mhm.
really help us identify where might there be emotional contributors to illness.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know it's overlooked a lot of the time, especially when you're in like the conventional side of medicine. And even in functional medicine, it's not something that, a lot of people are trained in. Like literally, I'd never heard of EVOX until you told me about it, right? And I haven't heard many people talking about it. So, can you explain to people? I know you have like a little bit right now already explained, but exactly like what goes into that therapy because that's what you're helping people with every day.
Completely. There's so much I could say about this, so I'll try to condense it and keep me steer me right if I start to go too far. But the essence of EVOX as a technology, there's two components. So the first is something called voice mapping. And then there's frequency output or biofeedback. So, what we're doing with voice mapping is as the client is talking, I'm actually able to measure tones in their voice to get a graph of what emotions are imbalanced. So, we're measuring emotions through tones in the voice. And I will have a literal graph that shows up on my screen that tells me fear is showing up as imbalanced. And I can see it in four categories: it's extremely imbalanced, high, medium, or low.
Mhm.
And there's 12 emotions that we can measure. So voice mapping is identifying imbalanced emotions through the voice.
Mhm.
The frequency output or the biofeedback is where we are then outputting into the body frequencies that have been found to help support the balancing and the release of those emotions. So that's the nitty gritty. We're measuring imbalanced emotions, we're outputting balancing frequencies, but how is that actually facilitating any change? This is something I always like to talk about because for a number of reasons. I think I might be one of the only practitioners who is solely using EVOX in my practice. Most other EVOX practitioners are chiropractors or doctors who are using it kind of in conjunction with a lot of other things they're doing. This is like the sole thing. This is all I do every day with every patient or client. And so I think it's important to kind of know what is EVOX doing by itself,
Mhm.
regardless of what practitioner is using it, and then how am I using it really specifically with depth psychology. So EVOX, we've got the kind of tech beneath it, but there's two main things I really think it's achieving within the body. One is it's very soothing and regulating for the nervous system,
Mm.
which is huge for any number of reasons. First of all, we all have some level of dysregulation.
Mhm.
And so to be able to give the body for whatever it is, 45 minutes to an hour, these calming, soothing safety signals can be super, super impactful. Most people at the end of sessions say, I feel so much lighter. I feel
Mhm.
so much calmer. I feel so at peace. But
Mhm.
that's really important in terms of the work I do, because oftentimes we're talking about triggering potentially even traumatic topics,
Mhm.
which, as you probably know, it triggers the stress response.
Mhm.
And so once we start getting triggered, that stress response gets signaled, literally parts of our brain shut down. And I think this is why sometimes traditional talk therapy without any kind of nervous system intervention can be very slow going for a lot of people, because we get triggered, stress response, brain shuts down, and we don't really have the full capacity of our mind, body, and spirit to now navigate and work through that topic. So I find that it allows people to move through really heavy topics and still
Mhm.
feel quite grounded and calm. But the other thing I really think EVOX is doing physiologically is helping break old neural pathways
Mhm.
that are just stuck on looping patterns, looping thoughts,
Mhm.
unmetabolized emotions. I have so many people come in who have said, I've spent 10 years in therapy on this topic, and 2 sessions cleared it for me. So
Mhm.
I do think that's in combination with EVOX and the depth psychology, but there really is something about EVOX. I like to say it makes the mind, body, and spirit so much more malleable.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whatever we're wanting to release or metabolize or move through is able to so much quicker. Whatever we're
Mhm.
wanting to integrate, new patterns, new belief systems, new
Mhm.
behaviors can also integrate so much quicker as well.
Yeah, it makes so much sense because I always thought about that for talk therapy because you just end up reliving something that was terrible and your nervous system doesn't know the difference between it just happening or you're like working yourself back up and then how do you really recover from that? There's no there's so I can see that it's hard to go through like it's and having something where you can actually neutralize makes so much more sense.
Completely.
Even excitement versus anxiety, like our body doesn't fully know. So just being able to regulate makes a ton of sense. But so yours was triggered by cancer, but this is part of literally any disease process that we can't get out of. This can help you.
Mhm.
But when you're
Mhm.
talking about cancer, what are you seeing? Like, do you see with specific cancers that it's specific blockages or specific patterns? Like, are you starting to see
Oh,
anything like
yeah.
that? Yeah.
Oh, completely, completely, and I don't only work with cancer and chronic illness,
Yeah.
but that really is kind of my specialty, my bread
Yeah.
and butter, what I love to do. That's sort of
Mhm.
what everything is centered around, and so I also see patterns with other diagnoses like MS or ALS,
Mhm.
hypothyroidism, some of these different things, but with cancer, it's so interesting because I really do see patterns even specific to each cancer. So breast cancer, for example, I call it the martyr archetype. It's usually the woman who is chronically overextending herself, perfectionism, people pleasing, probably was either the eldest daughter or a parentified child who had to take on adult roles very, very early, far too early.
Mhm.
Those are just some patterns I see with breast cancer.
Mhm.
And I could talk about throat cancer, brain cancer, colon cancer. Colon cancer is so often something I just cannot let go of. It's really interesting. In depth psychology, we love to go into the metaphor of disease.
Mhm.
So what is the colon? How does it serve us? It's a detox organ. It's a digestion organ. So what can't I digest? What
Mhm.
have I not been able to let go of? But it
Mhm.
usually centers around deep, it goes even beyond fear. It's like a deep panic or kind
Mhm.
of helplessness that is paired together that I often see with colon cancer. And that could be around any number of topics. That could be around immense chronic fear around finances, or it
Mhm.
could be immense chronic fear around a past trauma that never got metabolized. Um, with cancers of the sex organs like prostate cancer, ovarian cancer, I personally have never worked with a prostate, ovarian, or cervical cancer patient who didn't have some kind of sexual trauma. So These are patterns, and I do think across the board, this is actually what my whole PhD dissertation is gonna be on, is if cancer is a message from our psyche, what is it here to deliver? What is it here to communicate? And how might that be a different message from other illnesses like MS, like, Hashimoto's, whatever it might be?
What about when it's, like, systemic? What is the thing there when people are MCAS and, all of the like, I mean, I'm asking for a friend myself, and it's like your whole body, like, what are you
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Autoimmune is really interesting to me because if you go into again, kind of the metaphor of the disease, it's I'm attacking myself.
Mhm,
So my first question would be is there immense self-criticism?
mhm,
Or where might I be harboring regret,
mhm,
anger, critique towards myself, either kind of chronically present day, or it could be over a past event that happened that I'm not able to kind of let go of, metabolize, forgive, understand, etc. Maybe I grew up in really critiquing environments. It's interesting. I had a client with mast cell, and we talked about that because it's also the immune system. Everything is a threat.
mhm.
Everything is a threat. And so when we look at it through that metaphor, why is my spirit labeling everything as a threat? What
Mm,
were some of the original dangers and threats and fears that I may have experienced oftentimes in childhood that never got metabolized? And so why aren't the safety signals in my spirit able
yeah,
to turn off? And this takes us right, it's unique for everyone, but it takes us down a whole line of inquiry of, and if my psyche is labeling everything as a threat, there's narratives beneath that. I'm always interested in getting to the root narratives.
mhm,
Even expressing emotions for me isn't root cause in terms of
mhm,
emotional healing. There's emotions. The emotions only exist because there's narratives beneath them. So
mhm,
I'm labeling everything as a threat. What are the narratives beneath that? Some narratives beneath that are everything is dangerous. When might that have actually been true for you? And maybe a part of our work is to expand your unconscious to see that that's not true anymore. But there's
mhm,
often very likely narratives within the unconscious of everything's a threat and I'm incapable.
mhm.
I can't protect myself. So those are the things that we want to work to start to expand.
Wow, this is very deep, and I honestly can't think of one person that I'm working with that doesn't need it, including myself. And like, I'm an intuitive person and I can label these things, but I think, and I can see them, but I'm like, there's obviously something that I haven't fully worked through when I still even have some symptoms. I've broken through a lot, but
Yeah.
like, it seems like that maybe missing piece that could be very powerful to get that that full-blown healing, like, get back to that, like, no vulnerabilities kind of state that
Yeah.
we're meant to be in, right?
Completely. Well, I mean, there's so much I could say here because this gets us into conscious versus unconscious work, but I'll get
Mhm,
there in a sec. But what I'll pause for a second to talk about is completely. I mean, one of the mottos of my work and my Healing Alchemy membership is no stone unturned. And if we are having experienced chronic illness, having experienced cancer, if we are in that ship of want to leave no stone unturned in my
mhm,
healing journey, emotional work must be a part of that.
mhm,
Thankfully, now we have plenty of studies demonstrating how chronic stress creates chronic inflammation. I did a whole webinar a few months ago on how chronic stress literally turns off the 4 mechanisms we have to fight cancer. So
yeah,
it's not just an indirect correlation, it directly correlates. And it's not just kind of a subjective idea of,
mhm,
emotions can kind of contribute. Like we now have the hard
okay.
scientific data to prove it.
I actually saw that too because I was actually it was on well, it was on your page because you saw Dr. Connolly, right? It was her Keneally. Sorry, I just read it on
Everyone says it wrong.
But, yeah, she had posted those and then you had reposted them, correct? Because I
I
saw
think that
all
might have been her. I reposted her post a while ago, but I did my own webinar just this year
Oh,
about,
amazing.
there's 4 main ways our body is inherently designed to fight cancer. And this is something I love to talk about because I think so many patients I work with, it feels like, especially if you're in solely the conventional world, it's, so unlucky, the body can't really do anything for it. It's so unfortunate. And the reality is we are inherently designed to fight cancer. We all have cancer cells, and
Mhm,
most of us, our body is fighting them off on a
mhm,
regular basis. So the
mhm,
question we're asking isn't, why did I get cancer? The question
Uh-huh.
we're asking is, why was my body no longer able to fight it off? And as you know, there's physiological and emotional components. So are there too many pathogenic infections that have been lingering? Are there hormone imbalances? Are there nutrient deficiencies? And in my world, are there unmetabolized emotions? Are there soul misalignments? And it's looking at that whole piece. But I think it's such an empowering message, because when we understand, no, it's not that your body, this thing happened to you and we don't know why, and your
No.
body isn't designed to fight it. It is. And if we can figure out some of these reasons why these systems got turned off, they've been proven that they can get turned back on.
Yeah, and it's always empowering. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's okay. But I want to come back to the conscious versus unconscious, because this is what I hear most of the time. Most people who come to work with me are people who have done a ton of talk therapy and either didn't find it that impactful or only found that it took them to a certain point. And this isn't to knock talk therapy, it absolutely has a place.
Mhm.
With that said, talk therapy is primarily about the knowledge of what happened and how it's impacting you. It's not necessarily clearing the deep seated roots and beliefs and emotions that are fueling the patterns you're stuck in. I
Mhm.
often like to give this metaphor of a magnet and these behaviors that we might feel stuck in, whether it's behaviors of eating foods that don't serve me well, or self sabotage, or dating toxic people, or depression. It's like a magnet that keeps pulling me into these patterns, these thoughts, these behaviors.
Mhm.
Talk therapy makes us aware of the magnet. So we're like, that's what's happening. That's what's pulling me in. But for the rest of our life, we're just counter forcing the magnet.
Mhm.
Unconscious work gets rid of the magnet.
I love
So
that.
we don't have to exert all this energy counterforcing. It's that magnet has been cleared. And this is what gets me so excited, because I think so many of us really have put in our biggest efforts to grow and process trauma and process old wounds. And we're like, why am I still doing this thing? Or you're able to maintain, like, not doing that old pattern anymore, but it
Mhm.
takes immense effort
Mhm.
immense
Mhm.
effort and kind of focus and intention. And the reality is, what I see time and time again with myself and clients is, when we do the unconscious work, the change starts to happen so organically and so smoothly and with so much more ease, really. But it's so important, because we know that it's the unconscious mind that is responsible for 80 to 95% of the decisions we make in a day. So we
Crazy.
could say 80 to 95% of our lived experience is being dictated by the unconscious. So if we're only doing conscious work, for example, talk therapy, life coaching, we're only looking at 5 to 20%
Mhm.
of root cause.
Mhm.
So unconscious work absolutely has to be a piece of the puzzle if we want to address the bigger issues, because what I often like to say too is, you might intellectually know, oh, okay, I'm in this pattern of,
Mhm.
for example, if I'm working with a breast cancer patient, she's like, I know I'm a perfectionist. I know I'm a people pleaser. I know it doesn't serve me well and I can't seem to stop.
Mhm.
And I've done a ton of talk therapy. So I know that it comes from my overly critical mother who I never felt good enough for. And so I always had to do everything perfectly. They might know all of that already and yet still aren't able to make the change. What I like to remind us is, it's because it's not 35-year-old you we need to dialogue and convince. It's probably like 6-year-old you
Mhm.
or 10-year-old you. And so we've got to get into the unconscious and go into some of these inner imagery and inner dialogues and talk with the part of you who created the belief,
Mhm.
to allow her to express what she never got to vocalize, identify beliefs that got created from these dynamics and patterns. And then what does that part need to hear to start
Mhm.
to integrate new beliefs, to start
Mhm.
to integrate new behaviors? So that's the essence of the work, but that is really what distinguishes kind of conscious from unconscious. Conscious is more about just knowing the what, when, where, how.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
very different from really like metabolizing and shifting narratives that are deep in the unconscious that you might not even be aware you have.
The only thing I can compare that to that I've done is, like, some hypnotherapy where they did, like, what came up when you were younger, and then it was, like, these situations popped up, and I was like, "Really? That was it?" You know? Like,
Yeah.
that could be like, and I did find, like, profound change from a few sessions, and, like, and then for me, knowing what I do now about frequency and hearing like the voice mapping component, and then you're actually like feeding back in a frequency to kind of, because we can't, like you said, the unconscious is so hard to clear for
Mhm.
ourselves. And I know our cells are always listening to the negative self-talk, and we all know, we can all maybe think of times in our life when we were in what someone might call like a flow state, or things were going good, and how, maybe for a while we interrupted that, like, consciously as well.
Mhm.
I can think of times in my life where, like, my body felt really good. All these things were flowing towards me, like, and I try to, what was the mindset I was in? And a big thing I talk about what I just went through is I felt really, at that time, I felt really connected to this higher power that, I don't have to name. But when I got
Yeah.
really sick with like Lyme and all the mast cell stuff, like I felt like fully disconnected from
Mm.
the ability to even get there. Like I was so stuck in the physical that, like, again, so I meet people there a lot because I'm like, I needed the things that killed this and did that. And
Totally.
right and now I can work on the things where I can work on the subconscious. And I think there was space for me to do it then, but I think I was just so like up here that,
Maxed out. Yeah, totally.
yeah, but I mean, I just know how powerful it is. I know how you can heal. Like, I just had one patient too. She just left, her old work, her old patterns, and everything healed. She was MS patient,
Yeah.
right? Like interrupted those patterns, and then you heal from something that, oh, apparently you're just going to be medicated forever. And like, and obviously we know there's different root causes, and this is one of the main ones. But yeah, it's just so fascinating to me, and it really, when you explain it the way that you do, it just makes it make even more sense, and you're like, I mean, I'm signing up with you for an appointment right after this.
I'm so glad, because sometimes it can feel a bit abstract, and making it land in a way that's a little more concrete and kind of we can get our heads around is important, because it can be a little bit abstract. So I'm glad to hear that it's making some sense.
Oh, it makes lots of sense. I don't know, when you were talking about the cancer, like the cells or the things that get turned on from the chronic stress, I was thinking of that saying, like, elephants don't get cancer. And it was like some copies of genes, genetics that they have, or they have extra copies more than we do, but ours get shut off. Probably
Mhm.
those are the components that you're talking about for. But can you kind of explain to people like how the chronic stress shuts off those things that then
Yeah.
turn on these
Yeah,
mechanisms?
totally. I'll talk about it in kind of layman's terms
Yeah,
so
that's
that I
perfect.
think it's easier to understand. So, if we're talking about cancer specifically,
Mhm,
there's four sort of fail safes the body inherently has to make sure that cancer cells aren't able to grow, proliferate, and move to other places. So, these are literally the four ones grow, survive, hide, spread. So,
mhm,
we have built in mechanisms that if a cell starts to get a little wonky and things aren't working right, the body has systems built in to stop the growth of that cell. It shuts down the growth factor.
mhm,
Likewise, when it starts, if that gets mechanism doesn't work, the next fail safe is it's not shutting down, it's continuing to grow. We're just going to kill that cell off, autophagy. So the survive, that gets shut off from chronic stress. Then there's the hiding mechanism where chronic stress actually down regulates our immune system. So we have immune cells that are built to target cells that have gone wonky, if you will.
mhm,
And they can spot those pretty quickly. They stop them from growing. If they keep growing, they actually kill that cell off. So that sort of surveillance system gets super down regulated so that now the immune system is missing some
mhm,
of these cells. And then they're being allowed to continue to grow, and then the autophagy sort of die off mechanism is also getting turned off. And then the fourth way is our body's designed to prevent spreading. So
mhm,
if all of those mechanisms don't work, the immune system's not catching it, it's not stopping the growth, and it's not stopping that natural autophagy, we have systems built in, excuse me, to block off that cell from migrating to other parts of the body. This is
mhm.
often what happens with cysts is the body creates
Yeah,
tissue around it to
mhm,
prevent things from moving to other places. And so that mechanism also gets turned off so that the cell is then now able to move and grow and spread. There's also another mechanism where you probably know this better than I do. We don't just build new blood vessels willy nilly.
mhm.
And cancer cells can actually turn off that mechanism to allow the body to grow new blood vessels to
Mhm,
pull more nutrients and energy to it. So
mhm,
those are 4, actually 5 different ways. Those are all 5 mechanisms we have built in to stop cancer from growing and thriving. All
mhm,
of those 5 mechanisms get turned off by
mhm,
chronic stress.
mhm.
And I could get really specific into the hormones it turns off that then turns
Yeah,
off
yeah,
these
yeah.
and kind of all of that, but that's the essence of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's our body's powerful and those mechanisms get interrupted and then, there's the whole component to cancer. What do you think of like the whole parasitic world, like the cancer's a parasite kind of thing?
Well, and I mean, I've never seen a cancer patient who didn't have parasites, but also we all
Uh-huh.
have parasites. So I think that's still like too broad of brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Parasites, it's interesting. Again, I always will go to metaphor. People probably get
Yeah.
annoyed with me, but
No, I like it.
parasite, the essence of a parasite is this is a foreign object that has come into my body and is feeding off of me. I
Mhm,
don't know that I would label cancer in that way because it's actually my own tissue
mhm,
that has turned against me.
mhm,
So that's a different metaphor there. That's a different kind of thing. And yes, now this bad tissue is feeding off of me, but
mhm,
I think it's really interesting to think about it's not something external that came in. It's my own cells that once served me really well
mhm,
that are now attacking me. And
mhm,
we could then now extrapolate that metaphor into these bigger questions of what patterns am I living in that maybe did serve me really well
mhm,
and are now attacking me and harming me. For example, as a kid, my pattern of, I don't know, not trusting anyone and keeping everyone at arm's distance might have protected me from the people who really were hurting me at the time, but now it's keeping really good people away from me. It's keeping
mhm,
everyone at arm's distance. So it's not serving me well anymore. My pattern of perfectionism maybe in some ways serves me well, but
mhm.
it's now the negatives are starting to far outweigh the
Yeah.
positives of that. So this thing that once served me is now harming me.
Yeah, but it's just the whole mechanism of, everyone's taking these anti-parasitics and then they're shrinking their cancer down to nothing. But then I've seen 2 different, um camps of this. Like some people are like, the actual cancer is your body is trying to wall off all these parasites. And if you actually dissected it, then there's parasites in it. I mean, that should be easy and that should have already been studied. And then someone else is saying, no, the anti-parasitics just block those different mechanisms that you
Mhm.
said that get turned off. They turn some of them on and then your body gets it itself. So again, I haven't
Yeah.
gone deep enough into it, but like, I mean, you're seeing these crazy anecdotes of people,
Oh,
healing,
yeah.
and it doesn't take away the cause or that they have to work on, the subconscious reasons that they got that, but it's just always, like,
Mhm.
interesting to me, like, I'm always just
Yeah.
like, it should be easy, like, because even the whole multiple sclerosis side where, Dr. Alan McDonald goes in the brain and, like, cerebral spinal fluid of postmortem of people who had MS, Parkinson's, all of that, and in every single person, there were, partial pieces of tapeworm, there was either
Mhm.
Lyme, what or both,
Yeah.
and it's like 90%. It's like, these are also things we should know, and then it doesn't change the
Mhm.
fact that the reason that they were able to access our body are all the reasons that you're talking about where we got weakened, but it's like, I feel like we should just know right now that if there is a tumor, then it does have, like, the parasites in it, like, why don't we know that now?
Yeah.
Then we work on all the other stuff, but it just always gets me thinking. And I know there's always multiple ways to heal too. I think some people can heal just by healing the unconscious if they can have time and they can grasp it and work with someone like you where they actually are making breakthroughs. I think our body can heal even, as the intervention 100%. I have seen people shut off intense genetic diseases based on subconscious work
Yeah.
or even, they were integrating, I think, Wim Hof with some unconscious work, with some other therapies and reversing this crazy thing that's supposed to make their body overheat. And then they literally are supposed to pass away of like cooking from the inside out. Like
Yeah.
it's like RYR like syndrome or something so rare.
Mhm.
And so I've seen people shut it off with barely any intervention other than similar work to what you're saying. So I
Yeah.
know the power of the brain. It's just like, I think you're giving people like a little way to access it a lot easier that he spent 100% of his time working on this because he was,
Right.
he had all this income made from before where he could just only work on that. But not everyone can do that. Right. So
Yeah. And also, our conscious thoughts are important, right? If we're having really negative looping thoughts on a conscious level,
Mhm.
absolutely, we want to work on shifting those thoughts.
Yes,
But
yes.
I have people come in all the time who are like, I do my affirmation statements every day, and they're still letting their narcissistic mother abuse them.
Mhm.
So you're sending your unconscious two completely different narratives.
Oh, yes.
And it doesn't matter how many affirmation statements you read,
Mhm.
if your behaviors are still communicating danger, low self worth, fear, all these different things, that's what's going to communicate a stronger message. And
Mm.
also, there's kind of two realms of this. I always talk with my patients and clients about there's these two roads, right? We're looking at where is their present day turbulence and
Mhm.
then where is their past unmetabolized turbulence. Both are important. Sometimes it's there were some really significant traumas. We need to go metabolize those past things. But sometimes not sometimes, there always are also present day turbulence or misalignments where
Yeah.
this illness might also be the soul, the psyche, the body, the spirit saying, not only do I need you to process that thing from 20 years ago, I also need you to make some changes here,
Mhm.
present day. This
Mhm.
relationship that I've been in that totally doesn't serve me. I know I'm settling. I know I deserve so much better. This career path I've always wanted to take that I've had in the back of my mind that I know will be so fulfilling that I've never taken that leap to do. Those are so important too. So it's not always just about what's the past stuff we got to get rid of. And I wouldn't even really describe it in those terms. It's
Mhm.
also what's the life? What is the alignment and the authenticity my
Mhm.
psyche and my soul is yearning for?
Mm.
That is also contributing to these misalignments within my body. But so the point there being that like just bringing in positive mental thoughts is rarely enough for people, which is why we get stuck and we get frustrated. And I also find I could do a whole podcast on like spirituality as emotional bypass. So I won't
Wow.
get into that either
Love
because I
that.
think there's a lot of ways we just bypass the emotions we don't want to process by going straight to spirituality or straight even to gratitude or positivity. And then we've just completely dismissed ourselves. So we need
Yep.
all of it
Mhm.
together. But I'll speak really, really quickly to kind of like that parasite conversation.
Yeah.
It's interesting because having been in the holistic integrative health world for so long now, there's a couple comments I'd make. One, I think it's probably a both and. My hunch would be that it's a both and in terms of like parasites and cancer, that I've never seen a cancer patient only have one factor. So
Uh-huh.
this is why actually stay away from the word root cause because it almost suggests that there is one ultimate root cause we have to get to. I like to say contributors, and we've got to look at all the contributors, no matter
Mhm.
how big or small. There might be
Mhm.
some contributors to cancer that are much, much bigger
Yeah.
that we want to go after, but there's always multiple contributors. So, and to that end, when we're talking about like Parkinson's and ALS and patients who've been kind of dissected postmortem and they're seeing parasites, I also think sometimes though, like science can get too acute. And
Mhm.
it's sort of like, okay, so you found parasites in all of them. My hunch would be we'd find parasites in every single person we dissected ever. So it's not a strong enough correlation for me to go, and that's like the sole root cause. Although I just think it's so clear, like parasites are an issue we all need to be addressing. They cause
Mhm.
immense inflammation. They hold their weight in other toxins like heavy metals and candida and mold and mycotoxins. So I think they're probably massive contributing factors. And there's still a bigger question of now why were parasites able to thrive in my body?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's why it's all interconnected. It's what are the nutrient deficiencies that are allowing them to thrive? What is the fear I'm storing in my gut that is allowing them to thrive? So it's all interconnected.
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying, it's like even when, people are fighting in relationships because, one person's saying all the words, like, but their actions aren't following and they get in fights, that's like when you're talking about the spirituality bypass, it's like your actions have to add up to, you can't just be saying affirmation because you're still doing the toxic behavior or the thing that's toxic to you. So it's like, even to your own body, actions speak louder than affirmations, is what I heard.
1,000%. 1,000%. I'll often call it like inner self versus outer self. I kind of refer to the unconscious as the inner self and our consciousness as the outer self. And absolutely, it's about creating relationship and safety between the inner self and the outer self. I think so many of us don't realize how the wounds we're inflicting on ourselves. And so often it's wounds that others inflicted onto us when we were kids. You
Mhm.
know, I felt neglected. I felt dismissed. I felt devalued. And we don't realize how we're doing that to ourselves. So now
Mhm.
it's a double wound because you're picking at an old wound that's been unhealed and then you're inflicting the very same one on yourself when it's, you know, for me, I struggled with neglect so hard, so hard. Like neglect and self-sabotage were my MO patterns. And it really struck me so hard because I did a lot of work around how the grief and the anger around the neglect from particularly my father
Mhm.
and then the abuse that happened there. And when you look at it externally, it's so stark and you can go, that is so wrong. I can't believe you do that. How could you not feed a child until
Mhm.
1 p.m. and just leave them to fend for themselves, you know? And then what I realized is, holy shit, I'm literally doing that to myself.
Mhm.
I'm not even eating breakfast because I'm just so busy and I'm moving through my day. And then I get to 2 o'clock and I'm starving and I'm exhausted and now I'm in a cortisol flare because I didn't eat all day. And it's like, oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
am treating myself the way my father treated me. And I didn't even see it.
Literally me right now. Just not feeding myself. I'm like, you might hear my stomach growl. No, I mean, it makes so much sense, and it's very profound, like, when you just have it laid out like that, it's just very much,
Yeah.
"Okay, you got some work to do."
Yeah. And so like the work sometimes it is big things. You know, I was also sexually abused by my dad. So that's something I'm going to be tending and
Yeah.
metabolizing my whole life and processing that and looking at how is that rippling out in all these different ways. But sometimes it really is these little things of like what is going to create trust and safety within me. Whoa, it
Mhm.
might just be feeding myself breakfast.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might be getting myself enough water every day because there's an inner little Stephanie
Yeah.
who's like, "Steph, I see that you love me and you want more for me and you wanna keep up leveling me, but how can I trust you with more when you don't even feed me breakfast?"
Mhm.
And
Why does
that's
that
where
always
I think
make
this,
me
like
wanna cry when somebody talks to me as if they're my little self? Like, why do I wanna ball my face up? I swear, it's, like, immediate. It's like, wow, it's just powerful, but yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's about the relationship, really. I know sometimes, and especially on social media, you'll see a lot of, like, release limiting beliefs, clear repressed emotions, and I try to stay away even from those terms because it makes it seem like this is just some quote unquote "negative thing"
Yeah.
that's living in my psyche that I have to go in and extract and get rid of,
Mhm.
and I completely reject that entire narrative.
Mhm.
That's not what it is.
Mhm.
The version of me that was self-sabotaging my business success,
Mhm.
that's a 3-year-old me who was being sexually abused by her dad, who has this fear that no one is safe. And if I get too successful, I'm gonna stand out a lot and I'm gonna attract
Mhm.
really dangerous people to me.
Mhm.
So it's not, "Oh my god, I gotta get in there and extract this self-sabotage and my brain is just such an asshole and I need to get rid of it." It's, "No, I need to go into relationship with my 3-year-old self
Mhm.
and let her know, you know what? There were some really bad people in your life, but there's not so many bad people in your life now. And what's different is you are so much more powerful than you ever were. So
Mhm.
we don't even need to be afraid of attracting bad people in. In fact, you probably will because
Mhm.
there are bad characters out there.
Yeah.
But you have so much more power and autonomy to protect yourself. You have so many more good people in your life to also protect you. That's the work. And
Mhm.
that, I think, changes the essence of all of it. It's not my mind hates me, and this is a big shtick I have with conventional psychology. It's
Mhm.
overly like, well, your mind's just an asshole and we need to change
Mhm.
its thoughts that are wrong. It's
Yeah.
not that. So much of what's fueling us is coming from past versions of ourselves where the thoughts were true. So we need to honor that truth and dialogue with that little part or
Mhm.
past part and then expand them into the now.
But how do you, like, change that? Because like, you said something at the beginning, are you, like, the oldest daughter? And I just happen to be that, and I know that feeling where why do you think you're the one that has to take care of everyone always? Like, even as adults, like, it's like, how do you is it because, like, then you just care for yourself more, and then that's how you or, like, how do
Yeah.
you extract that and take, like, this, like, personality trait that's, like, part of who you are and be like, "It's just not how this is take it easy," you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, if I broke it down into like two big categories, this is way oversimplified. Every
Mhm,
narrative or belief system in the unconscious works out down to two main things. It's either that change I want to make is not safe
mhm,
or I don't deserve it,
okay,
which ultimately also comes back down to safety. So it's really all about safety. And the unconscious is always going to choose the perceived best option, keyword, or the perceived safest option. The keyword here is perceived. So if your little brain created this narrative of to have connection and approval, which to a child means love and safety, I have to take on everyone's stuff. I have to take
mhm,
on all this responsibility. That's what got me acceptance, which in my mind got me love and safety. So now in adulthood, that belief system might still be running the show. And so your psyche's doing this calculation. I can either have more boundaries and stop overextending myself and have less connection, therefore
mhm,
less love and safety, or I can keep overextending myself, but have this connection, love, and safety that I need. If that's the perception, your psyche's always going to choose the perceived best option. So, but a part of our work is to go, and this could be like an hour session where we really start getting into the unconscious and dialoguing with that child you. And what did child you, two things. Realistically, if you hadn't taken on all that responsibility, what would have happened?
mhm.
And we want to answer that realistically and go, would shit really have hit the fan? Excuse
Yeah,
my
yeah.
language.
No, I love it.
And sometimes the answer is yes. Like the reality is yes, my parents we were so overextended or so incapable that if I didn't take on all the things I did, things would have been way worse. And sometimes we ask that question and we go, actually, no, things probably would have been okay. My child psyche perceived though that like chaos was going to ensue if I didn't take all this on. So we have to first identify like what does my psyche think will happen if I don't keep doing this?
Mhm,
And then kind of, dialoguing with that part. A lot of it is we have to acknowledge that younger self and go, that child you who took on all that responsibility, what did she never get to express? And that's not an intellectual expression. That's like, I do a lot of imagery because the primary language of the unconscious is image. So we'll do often a lot of like adult you talking to child you and
mhm, mhm,
kind of imagery like that while we're in with the EVOX technology. So I mean, I could take us through a whole process, but even just identifying the belief system sometimes is enough to allow it to change, sometimes isn't. What I
mhm,
often say to clients is the unconscious will be willing to hear what we have to say once it has first felt heard. So if we come in hot to this little like 10-year-old Stephanie and we're like, girl, I see you. You thought shit was gonna hit the fan, but the
yeah,
reality is it wasn't, so we can let go of that narrative and you're all good and, like, let's move along to this new expansive narrative now. Like, there might still be a 10-year-old that's like, "Hang on,
mhm,
can you just sit with me?
mhm,
Can I just tell you how it felt
mhm,
to take on all these adult responsibilities at 10 and feel so overwhelmed and so scared, even if I maybe wasn't consciously thinking that, like when we
mm,
go back into relationship with that younger part, those are some of the things that can start to get acknowledged, validated, and expressed. And sometimes what I find, is just identifying the beliefs. Like sometimes there's all of that that has to happen too, of what still needs to be heard, acknowledged, voiced, expressed, witnessed before that part is even going to be open to
mhm,
hearing what we have to say, which might be, you know what? It was true. At 10, if I hadn't taken on all that responsibility, chaos was going to ensue. We would have been on so much worse.
mhm.
Is that still true? If I delegate some things, is chaos going to ensue? Maybe, maybe not. If it will ensue, what's within my power to do about it or prevent it? And also,
Mhm.
am I still the only one who's capable here?
Yeah.
Or might there be more capable people around me that I'm not even letting myself see because this narrative is so ingrained?
Yeah, that makes me think even getting the line when you have to ask more for help instead of be the helper kind of thing. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
all of a sudden you're incapacitated and you were completely the most functional person.
Yeah.
It's not just Lyme, but that was I mean, it was like, it was a big component if we're talking about contributors, that
Mhm.
things down for me. Yeah, like, then you have to ask for more help and do things like, you can't be micromanaging every situation and
Totally. Oh, yeah. I mean, I often say cancer, but I think illness in general often sets the boundaries we can't set for ourselves. And so sometimes a big part of the work when I'm working with a client experiencing cancer actively is you're making all of these amazing changes right now while you're in this diagnosis. You're setting boundaries, you're doing less, you're asking for help. And we need to make sure that your soul and your psyche know that when you're on the other side of this diagnosis, you're still going to maintain that.
Mhm,
You're not going to go right back into all of those old
mhm,
patterns. And this
mhm,
is where we start to get into questions like, how does illness serve me? How is it actually maybe getting me something that I need?
mhm,
I think if we wanna get, like, really kinda deep with this, for me, like, the sexual trauma, there was so much deep inner suffering and
mhm,
hurt and grief,
mhm.
and think illness brings you empathy,
Yeah.
and people are so loving, and they're so supportive, and there really is just, like, an inner girl in me who's like, "I am so sad and hurt and
Mhm,
suffering, and I just want support no matter where it comes from."
mhm,
And so, I think sometimes illness serves in that way of like, I'm getting this empathy, this love, this
mhm,
support, even though it's not necessarily for the core thing I'm actually needing it for, it's still a little bit sort of scratching that itch, if you will. But
mhm,
that's where the work is just so, so, so deep. It's
mm,
what am I getting from illness? Not
yeah,
just like what's the communication, but what am I getting from this that I might actually need, but in depth psychology, we would call that displacement. I'm displacing the grief and the yearning for support from the sexual abuse into this illness because I'm not really able to face the sexual abuse itself. I'm not able to say, "Hey, I need support with this thing.
mhm,
Can you come in?" I feel like I need a more valid reason
mhm,
to get help.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think about the difference between illnesses too, because like Kimmel, the guy that used to be in charge of the amp coil,
Mhm.
Freddie Kimmel, he suffered with cancer at one point and then severe Lyme disease at a different point. And he said that because people recognize cancer and they were so much more empathetic with him, he's like, it's so much easier to be a cancer patient than an invisible illness patient. So, because people look at you like you're malingering, like you're faking, like, I
Totally.
didn't get a lot of empathy from people that don't understand. They just think you look normal, you don't have cancer, you're not dying as far as they understand, or it's just so misunderstood or still not even like, like it's not recognized by conventional medicine. So you don't get any like of that. And I'm not comparing and saying I want one or the other, but it's just like, that it's like, what are they teaching you different kind of things like, right? The like different
Totally.
types.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And again, I'm, like, beating a dead horse here with this, but you listen to what people say
Yeah.
almost unconsciously, right? And you kinda just said, like, this invisible disease, this invisible hurt, and so, immediately, if we were in session, what I would be asking you is, like, outside of the Lyme, like, where was there an invisible hurt that wasn't getting tended, that wasn't getting soothed?
mm,
So, it's like we could do that
yeah,
over and over and over, but it's really interesting how the unconscious reveals so much to us
mm,
through our words, in session, through imagery. We do a lot with dreams because dreams are when the unconscious is its most raw. So there's a lot of communication coming from dreams and not in like,
yeah,
prophetic, we're going to tell you your future kind of way, but just
yeah.
what are your dreams telling us about what your psyche is needing to metabolize?
We could go crazy on I had these severe terrors in that was like one of my big symptoms was these like terrifying
Oh.
situations in and one of them was crazy like this night where I'm telling you I've never felt the amount of fear and my dreams were terrifying, but also when you play them back, you're like, it wasn't really that scary, but I had that this is the night I got way worse and I had a wireless heart monitor on. So like
Mm,
what energy that was putting through, but it was like one of the things that I blamed for my symptoms going from bad to where I felt like my body could have got rid of them to like worse. And
mm.
these vivid like, I thought I was, like, on this bridge and I was about to drive off like, just, like, things like that, and they were, like I was what it was I can't even put it into proper words to explain, like, how real it felt,
Yeah.
and then I woke up and I'm so groggy and I still need to sleep, but I'm like anyways, I'm it's you just brought that up and I was just like, because I was like, "That I've never experienced that before," and then it kinda continued, some nights just were terrifying, like
Yeah.
or most nights.
Dreams are absolutely fascinating, and I think there's some places that sort of give it a bad rep that make it seem less scientific than it is, but there's
Mhm.
so much unconscious communication. I used to have dreams I used to have a number of different recurring nightmares of, like, being chased, first of all, like, not being
Uh-huh.
able to run away, trying
Mhm.
to scream for help and having no voice,
Yes.
and as soon as I started working on the sexual abuse trauma, those dreams completely went away.
Wow, I used to have
But
those.
what a powerful metaphor for, like, that was actually the reality of my 3-year-old self is and my 6-year-old self and my 8-year-old self is I couldn't run away. I
Yeah.
couldn't scream for help, and those memories were so repressed, so I didn't
Yeah.
know that's what it was going to, but as soon as I was the memory surfaced and I started doing work around it, those dreams completely went away. I haven't had one since, probably, like, 5, 6 years now.
What about the generational side of, like, the fact that, you have to be very unwell as a parent to do that to your child?
Yeah, totally.
Like
I think I've recorded a couple episodes, at least on my specific
yeah,
story and relating to my father, and it's interesting because some people might really flare at this. I have empathy for the 4-year-old little boy he was who was sexually abused,
yeah.
and the immense trauma that happened in his family. I
Mhm.
have empathy for that, and it doesn't justify what happened,
No,
and he's no longer a part of my life and will never
that's
be
out.
allowed to
Yeah,
be a part of my life again.
absolutely not.
I can hold that nuance of you are an incredibly wounded, damaged person. And the reality is, at some point in adulthood, if you were noticing you were having these inklings, you should have got help. You should have said, like, I cannot repeat this pattern. I don't know how to stop myself, but I need to go find someone who's going to help me. So the nuance is there, and there is empathy for the
Yeah.
wounded child in him. And then there is nothing but like boundaries for the
Mhm.
adult self who chose
Yeah,
not to
but
do
no,
anything.
just to be clear, I was bringing that up not even for empathy for him, but, like, do we just work on our like, selves and we
Mm.
can heal those generational, like, wounds, like, the person
I work
who
with
ca
generational stuff really directly, a
Yeah.
lot. I love generational trauma, also birth trauma. I see a lot of birth trauma. If
Mhm.
you were, like, separated from your parents in the NICU, adoption, there's a lot of psychological imprints that come
Mhm.
from adoption, but generational trauma is huge. We know the imprints of trauma can be passed down at least 3 generations. I
Yeah.
had a client who came in and had a fear of drowning.
Mhm.
And she was like, "I don't even know why I have this fear of water and this fear of drowning. I've never had a scary water experience, nothing." In doing the generational work, there was a cousin who had drowned before she was even born.
Wow. Yeah.
And when we processed that and started working through that, her fear of water completely went away. And this is where I do think like there's more studies we want to know like why did that fear of water and drowning surface in her so acutely versus
Mhm.
maybe not so much in others?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I see the patterns replicated through everyone in the family system. But generational trauma is huge and we tend to talk about it and work with it really specifically where it's not just we're healing your stuff, we're mapping out trauma generationally and
Uh-huh.
then doing work around that really specifically.
Okay, let's talk quickly and then I'll let you go. I know I've taken a lot of your time and I was behind. Okay, so now we're talking about the people, we got sick, we're trying to work through it. What about these people that just, treat their body like a playground, smoke, do whatever, they live to 119. There's like even that clothing line, it's called like assholes live forever or something like that. Like, what is it with that? Like, or do they just have this powerful subconscious or they just like serve themselves? Like, I always am like really like,
Yeah,
interested in like the polar opposites too. Like, what?
totally. I have 2 trains of thought on that. One is sort of like physiological, one is then kind of unconscious. Physiologically, I do just think people of generations before us were I mean, we just know they were exposed to so much less.
Yeah, yeah,
From the moment they were born till now, like, they were
yeah.
we are exposed to so much more chemicals and
Yeah.
toxins than any generation ever before, from
Mhm.
birth till now. So, I think on some level, there's an element of that, of just when they were younger, they were exposed to a lot less. So, even though they're exposing themselves to a lot of stuff now, their body just might have more capacity, more resilience. Also, I
Mhm.
think there's an element of, like, genetics and epigenetics where because they were exposed to less, their parents and their grandparents were exposed to less, they might have been born with, like, their inflammatory genes turned off. But
Mhm.
new generations are getting born with these genes turned on because of all the chaos. So I think that's an element to just consider.
Mhm.
With that said, I really do think the unconscious is so powerful that if you just have these narratives of I'm fine, everything's fine, nothing's good, and it's like so deeply, deeply, deeply ingrained, I
Mhm.
really do believe you can. My grandma is a perfect example. She's 97. She eats Taco Bell and Diet Coke every day.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
crazy.
she's like bopping along, like no one's business. It's not,
Yeah.
she has had health issues, but by all means, when you think about kind of the integrative medicine rhetoric, she should not have lived this long on that diet.
Yeah.
But she also is, in my personal opinion, deeply, deeply disassociated from the real world and living in this kind of disassociated, made up world place. And I actually believe that narrative is so deep in her conscious and unconscious that it is creating her reality that she's fine.
It's amazing.
It's
I mean,
wild.
it's gonna tap into
But
something like no, but, like, even the
but
people
how
that
can
are
we do that without but
yeah.
she's also living in such inauthenticity and there's no connection with people in her
Mm,
life. So we could look at that and go, "Great, she's eating
no.
Taco Bell and Diet Coke and she's living to 97." Yeah, and she has no authentic relationships.
Yeah, no, that's not
And,
great.
it's such a deep state of dismissal and disassociation and disillusion
Mhm.
that that's not what I would personally strive for, but what I would strive for is like, how can I tend the parts of me that have these really limiting narratives and old wounds so that we could really step into that expanded state from an authentic, healed place, not a deeply disillusioned place.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That was just for me because I always thought of that because like, I had this one patient and, like, just for, like, soft tissue, he just did whatever, and he literally wore, like, clothing that said that, and he, like,
Yeah,
never did anything seriously wrong, and he was just, like, smoking and drinking all the time, and I'm like
totally.
anyways, just thought it was
Yeah. I
interesting.
also think a lot of us have narratives that health and goodness has to be hard.
Yeah.
And if it's not hard, we didn't do it right, we don't
Yeah.
deserve it. And so I for sure have narratives like that because I'll find myself being like, "I don't need to be stressed right now.
Yeah.
I am making this situation stressful and difficult when it doesn't need to be." And there is
Mhm.
some sort of self-serving narrative beneath that of, "But if I don't end my day stressed, I didn't give my best. So I didn't earn it, so I don't deserve this, and I don't deserve
Yeah.
what, you just paid me for that session if I'm not stressed and frazzled at the end of it," which is so
Yeah.
not true.
Yeah, that's so true too. I'm just like, "I didn't do enough today." Like, I'm so chill, like, yeah,
And I
anyways.
think it's the same thing with health though. Like I really do think we can kind of get stuck in like if I'm not doing all these things, I
Yeah.
can't heal.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be really careful of those conscious or unconscious narratives of there's a ton of amazing things and health can be available to me in really simple ways too. And where am
Totally.
I limiting myself with some of these narratives? So
Yeah, I stopped being, like, I call it a purist a long time ago, and I mean, I learned lessons through this illness too, where it's like, certain things help that maybe was like, I thought, "Oh, I would never like antibiotics or this or that." Like, certain things help me, not that I'm against them in completely, but, it's just like I was humbled in multiple ways, but then I also learned, again, the whole perfectionism side of things that just don't serve you. There's no way to be perfect for your health, even when you're healing from chronic disease. So yeah, it's giving yourself grace as well. But like, just like you said, knowing that these things are available to you, utilizing them, like, but not being like, I didn't use that today, so I'm terrible and I'm not going to get
totally.
better. Yeah.
Oh my god, I only saunted once this week. I'm not gonna heal. I'm gonna stay
Yeah.
sick. I'm gonna regress so much. Like, that will become a reality. Let's not say that. Let's say I only did one sauna this week and my body is so capable of healing. I can have health even with one sauna, whatever it is, right? And that's not to say, of course, especially coming from someone who works with cancer patients, that's not to say that sometimes we don't really need to lean in and do a lot of things,
Yes.
but we've gotta really be careful of, and health can come with ease at some point too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could talk to you forever, but this has been
I know I could
amazing.
go on all day.
I can't to share it. I can't wait to book my own appointment because I definitely will. Because again, if I want to start crying when you started talking to my younger self, there's some work that we got to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk here.
Totally.
No,
We
but
all have it too.
yeah, no, but I really appreciate what you're doing and like the way you're approaching it. And honestly, just even like hearing you talk, you just have like this calming voice. Like you're just like, it's just, the whole package of what I think can help heal those deep wounds, like someone that you can trust. You have that trusting
Mhm.
voice and like just whole vibe in general. So I really appreciate you and I really appreciate you being on here and sharing everything and being vulnerable. And yeah, I
Oh
can't
my
thank you
god.
enough.
Thank you so much. It was such a thank you for giving me the platform. This is really like my soul's purpose. So whenever I get to talk about it, it just lights me up so so much. So thank you.
So where can people find you? I mean, we're obviously going to list it, but I just like when people.
Sure. I need to probably change my website name because it's way too hard to spell, but you can find me online at theaccrescent.com. Just check the show notes for the link. I'm not
Yeah.
even going to try and spell it for you guys. But there's a couple ways you can work with me. I have free 15-minute discovery calls if someone just wants to chat a little bit more, maybe share some of their story, and if they think it can help. I'm really good at being able to be like, yes, I think this could be a great resource for you. And then I work with clients one-on-one in person or remotely. And then
Mm,
I also have my Healing Alchemy membership, which is really it's designed for cancer and chronic illness patients. There's so many amazing resources in there that I just have seen my patients needed outside of sessions. So inside of it, there's something called the Soothing Sanctuary, which is basically a meditation library. So if you're, going into an MRI scan and you have claustrophobia, there's a meditation for that.
Mhm.
If you're waiting on test results, there's meditations and somatic exercises and vagus nerve practices. And then they get to join all my podcasts live and ask questions of the guests. And then there's a whole workshop in there called Subconscious Alchemy, where this is me trying to walk them through kind of the one on one work I do with clients. So that deeper emotional contributor processing and identifying, because there's a lot of people I book out quite a few weeks in advance. And there might be people who just might never be able to work with me. So I really wanted to create this platform that is a lot more accessible for people to get in and have amazing resources and still be able to do some of this deep, deep unconscious work in a more guided, kind of self paced way.
that's amazing. Well, that's amazing. And you have your podcast that they can listen to.
We have the Accrescent podcast. If you want to follow me on social media, it's at Leigh Ann Lindsey, which again, probably easier for you guys to just link because all my names are hard to spell.
Yay. It's not that hard, but I know my last name, I'm always saying that and I'm spelling it and I'm like, maybe I should just change it. But
I know,
no,
honestly.
it's amazing. I think that it's amazing how much you're helping people. And I hope this catches on for other practitioners to start doing this kind of work because you can't see all the people and it's
I
very much
know.
needed.
I know. Well, I could ask you a million business questions about expanding and bringing on more practitioners. That's something I would love to do. And I mean, ultimately, my dream would be to have a whole, like, holistic mental health facility that is bringing
Yeah.
in practitioners from all the different places. So those are
Yeah.
the dreams.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, I'm sure they'll come to reality because you're working on your subconscious.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.